the panelists in this 90-minute session today. Our moderator, and do forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Sandy, Sandy Hsiu-Chih, independent curator, art and film critic, historian, documentary filmmaker, and curator of Green Island Human Rights Art Festival 2019-2020. And our other guests are Hongjohn Lin, independent artist with an interest in transdisciplinary performance, also a writer and curator, and Charwei Tsai, independent multimedia artist based in Taipei. I have to say, I really like looking at people's backgrounds, so it's quite nice to see books and screens and doors and things. And then Sam Holland, who is the founder and director of Migration Matters Festival in Sheffield, but he will tell us later, perhaps, he is in a holiday location today, so we'll hear about that later. Sandy, I think, oh, before I turn it over to you, there are a few housekeeping things that people should know, pointers, tips. We welcome your participation, either in the chat room, any kind of comments you want to make or queries, or if you're having any technical issues that we can help with. But also there is a Q&A function, so feel free to ask questions. I will be monitoring them, as will everybody, during this session, and we can bring your questions in later. And if you need captions, your screen will either have at the bottom the CC that you can click on. Mine doesn't have that. I need to go to the more, the word more with the 3 dots above it, and I click on the 3 dots, and then it says show subtitles. So that's how I access captions. Again, if you have any issues, let us know, and do participate in the written form via chat room and Q&A. Enough of me, over to you, moderator Sandy.
Thank you, Donald. Thank you for your nice introduction, and your pronunciation for my name in Mandarin is just perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the curator of the Taiwan season, Ye Jiwen, for having me today, and to her team for the wonderful job they've done arranging this session. Okay, please, next slide. Tang, my slide, please. Next one. Yeah, thank you. Green Island, 绿岛, is an island located in the southeast of Taiwan, has beautiful scenery and attracts countless tourists every year. However, it also has a terribly dark history as a place where political prisoners were detained. During the White Terror in 1947, the February 28th incident, 228事件, an anti-government uprising which killed thousands of civilians, started the period of White Terror in Taiwan. Until the 38-year martial law was lifted in 1987, the White Terror lasted for 40 years. During this period, many advocates of left-wing ideals or Taiwan independence were sentenced to death or imprisoned, many of false charges. The prison of detaining these former political prisoners had the physical address number 15 流马沟15号, as you can see on the poster, which is located in the northeast of the island. But the address has now been changed, which means number 15 流马沟 has disappeared. Therefore, how to construct memory and build a narrative of this place with its dark history, and then to reimagine the relationship relationships among people, other species, and the environment from the perspective of ethics and the politics are the primary concerns of the past 2 editions of the Green Island Human Rights Art Festival. Okay, the first work I would like to introduce is Mystery Train, a collaboration between director Wu Dechun and the paper carving artist Chen Ruohan. Let's take a look at their interview. Please play video 1.
哦，还不错。那就差不多这样。我来。
纸雕的作品就是它每个人都要相连，相连的过程中，我想说，在白色恐怖的那个年代，有些人不见了，那个纸雕它就会断裂，它就没办法成为一幅作品。那透过这样的形式，我就尝试跟陈若涵老师联络，希望可以从他的作品的基础上面，然后创作这个神秘列车。
所以其实我们这次就是用我的纸雕创作的画面，那里面包括了过去，因为我一直以来这8年都是在创作台湾百景，然后用台湾各地的文化或是人的生活去创作纸雕作品。
那他们在列车上面想说的，或者是不能说的，虽然那辆列车经过了，但是我觉得都被留在了轨道上的石头，所以我就想要从这个出发点设计我的动画。
Next slide, please. This exhibition room was originally a dormitory for officers guarding the political prisoners. We built it into the number 15 Liu Ma Go Library to symbolize the spirit of utopia. Next slide, please. Besides the work Mystery Train, The Noise of the World by Yannick Dobie was also displayed in this library. Next. It's intended to show that utopia can become a dystopia at any time and to strive to develop it towards a utopia open to all. Next. Just like Yannick Dobie treats all creatures and phenomena equally as a recordist and a transmitter by letting them use sound to reveal themselves. On the basis of a broad equality, a perceptual community has been established with sound so that those once regarded as silent, for example, fishes and the corals under the sea, are heard. In this way, we intended to transform this originally dark and violent field into a platform to open the dialogue about our common future. Next video, please.
"因为我们是原住民嘛，就其实对我们来说，我们是被殖民者，就是现在即使是国民政府，对我们来说也还是殖民者。我就想要改变那个国旗的整个样貌。对我来说，熟悉的是织布啊，是软的东西，然后是就是各式各样的颜色，那个国旗，所以我就想要把它变成就是我的旗这样子。但其实我的身份是一个大杂烩，就是我又有汉人的血统，又有日本人的血统。对我来说，其实没有那么强烈的一个族群的意识。我想要传达的只是就是，如果撇开那种为了利益或是为了自己的国家，为了这种形式的东西，想要打破这个形式，所以就是做了3个国旗的进行式的那种感觉。
Okay, next. Yes, from the perspectives of those who have been victims of a political violence, nation is not home at all. Through the reweaving of the national flag, Lin Jiewen weaves dark history and the complexity of individual differences into the narrative of the growing collective imagination. Next video, please.
就是这次这首歌，其实是我跟台东在地的一个音乐人司马里奥一起共同写的。然后在里面，我们之前歌词讨论的时候，其实一开始是想要揣摩，就是受难者那种不自由的心情，就是那种被监禁啊不自由的心情。然后后来觉得，就是因为是由绿岛现在的居民开始唱嘛，我觉得其实那个时空对我来说其实蛮有趣的，就是现在的人去臆想过去。那我就在想，白色恐怖这件事情，其实它是一直延续下来的。它在每个时代都会有它的一个政治迫害的一些事件啊，跟一些因素。所以我其实引用了就是文学家福克纳的名言，就是过去它不会结束，它其实一直持续到现在。所以其实就是以这一句为基本，然后编写4个段落，一开始都是这样唱，然后有一种像是从过去的人接力，然后接续着面对这个恐怖的东西，然后有一种这样安抚过去的灵魂的一个意味在。像我是被我祖母带大的嘛，所以我祖母她是一个非常就是旧时代蛮迷信的人。小时候跟她去经历那些灵媒啊那些东西，对我来说都是一个很重要的回忆，跟一个很重要的一个经验这样子。所以灵媒的身体变化是很剧烈的，我觉得那个对我来说。那个感觉其实蛮冲击的，就是它可以瞬间因为所谓的附身跟降临，它可以换一个语调，换一个口气，然后甚至连眼神都不一样。所以那个是我第一次感觉到，其实人他是一个可以被装进不同灵魂的一个容器这样。
Next. Inspired by the experience of talking to the psychic or the medium, Lin Yi realized that the human body is a container that can be packed into different souls. Maybe it is the best metaphor for speaking out for the repressed, the marginalized, and the unheard. I would like to end my introduction by showing the trailer for the 2020 Green Island Human Rights Art Festival, directed by Uda Chen. Thank you for listening. Please play video.
If 在边缘画一个坐标为例，
改编自35个
日常到残酷。
Bella mama, bella mama, hey. Bella mama, hey.
？May I go out, sir?
阿公，你有看到无？就是你已经无罪啊！
你要好好的用功，其他的事情千万不管。
那只是这次的关键字就变成是。
If I had the car, I should be very happy.
Taiwan.
As you can see in this trailer, Hongjohn, and Charwei are both participating artists in this Green Island Human Rights Art Festival. I'm so happy to have them join me for this session. In his work, Biodictionary, in the 2019 edition, Hongjohn used the local delicacy, salty steamed buns, as a medium and took us into a sensual community created by art through various senses, such as taste, smell, and even touch. In 2020, he tried to use his father's life experience as an entrance to write a narrative of a memory, which is a private personal experience and also has collective significance. Without further ado, I'm happy to hand it over to Hongjohn. The time is all yours. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Sandy, for your introduction, and I also have to thank you for curating my work. Well, it's my honor to participate in this seminar. And thank you, Jingwen and Donna, to have me. Well, anyway, I think right now I have this chance to share my thoughts on my artwork, which is quite unusual because most of the time I'm pretty much recognized as a curator, and seldom present myself as an artist in such a occasion. For me, the Green Island project is it involves a lot of research and a lot of field study, and especially it creates a sense of a community. I think it's not only the community that refers to the Green Island itself, but also refers to the Taiwan as a community. So when dealing with the Green Island Art Festival, we have to talk about the political prisoner, political prisoner life there, and it's also have to deal with national trauma. and this nationality actually is a haunted stance for Taiwan, because you know, Taiwan's nationalism is always in this kind of ambiguous form, you know, because we think ourselves as a nation, whereas the China think that we are renegade province. So anyway, without further ado, I will show my slide. And so this project is it's called Biodictionary. Actually, it's a continuation from my previous work from Thailand in Bangkok, where I observed Islam community in Bangkok. You know, Thailand is pretty much a Buddhist country. So I'm looking very closely to the life of the Islamic community there. It's a very small community, and then I pretty much keep trace of what is disappear or what is disappear, what has already disappeared in the community, and making a documents on it. So so the idea of bio dictionaries actually is coming from Foucault's idea, and without really quoting from Foucault, I would take it as the idea of biopolitics is a politics that control the living, the death, the illness, and the birth through all kinds of form of a political governance, and that's what I think of biopolitical means. And bio, as a suffix of the word bios, refers to life, and actually it's pretty much regulate what a life can be. So throughout Foucault's career, he focused on a lot of issues such as the madness, sexuality, and disease. So I think that if I take the idea of biosphere to the very extreme, I think we are not really far from its opposite, which is death. So and of course, MB talk about the idea of necropolitics, and of course the surface of necros means death. So it also refers to some of the writing of George Agamben notion of a bare life. In the form of a bare life, a human life cannot have anything at any moment. A life is straight bare, and that's a situation of a bare life. So I'm thinking of try to keep the trace of it, and using all kinds of archive technique, such as an interview and talking to people and writing and video, and try to keep the trace of it. So that's why I name my work as a biodictionary, because in the form of dictionary, I'm trying to focus on the aspect of voice, of saying, and the very idea of a biodictionary is to document those which are disappear in order to trace this deployment of power. And that's how I start to develop my own idea. So as you can see here, the site is Green Island. Green Island. Right now, I'm showing you the impression map of Taiwan, and the Green Island is at the right corner, the very small corner. I'm going to zoom in, and so here you see the stereotypical imagination about Green Island. Green Island has the political prison, which is here, and also have the hot spring, and it raised Formosan deer, and on the top you can see that, and also on the side, you know, of course, it's a place for diving and snorkeling nowadays, and I show you the picture of it. So it's quite a contrast. Yet at the same time, it also is a huge political prison that the KMT started to use it after they retreated to Taiwan at 1949. So Green Island is an outlying island of Taiwan. It functions as a geopolitical of the margin. And I think the site of the biopolitics can be best expressed in an area in such a marginality. It can be more pronounced when we observe the center interacting with the margin. So I think it's a very interesting site, and I try to working in this place and try to keep the trace of it. So a lot, and that's you know, what we have the center of the picture. There's a prison, and it's a kind of a panoptic system that is offered here. Of course, is a response to Foucault's writing, and it's nowadays Green Island has lots of tourists in this small. So I start to interview with people around like 20 of them, and I'm talking to them on this in such a base that I can be that I start to recall their encounter with the political prison, because and this people ages from 87 to 65. So I try to trace that. I through interview I get their memory of their encounter with a political prison and their impression of it. So here are some of the interviewee, and Mr. Shi is a fisherman, and he talked about his encounter with it, and he talked about his on his chest. There's a wound here, and actually because it was stung by a fish, and then and it got hurt. At the time, the Green Island has a really low. Not many hospitals. The only hospital they have is in a political prison. So his life was saved by the political prison there in the Green Island. And so I get all this keyword and a lot of keyword, and then present in the format of a poster. And then I also have them to print it on the pattern of a coral. So the coral here, I'm also use it as a symbol of death, although you know it can be expressed as a ecological concern because of a lot of tourists there. And as Sandy just mentioned, that they have we have people to do the salty bomb, and then they talk about their encounter with the political prison there. And my second work of biopolitics, I'm really talking about this. I want to talk about my personal memory of my father. And my father was when my father was sick in hospital, he got delirium, and then he was he suspect that KMT is investigating him. So I pretty much use this narrative and put it in my video, and then. I also juxtaposed with a photograph from the central communication, and also with there's also a line in the video that is Shi Wenzheng's novel, where he talked about in his short novel Urine Drinker. He talked about this internalization of political situation of the White Terror that transformed into object, ABJECT, into object. So he's talking about urine and fluctuance and all of this, and I put in all this storyline in the video. So can we, without further ado, can we play the video now? I have a really short clip for 2 minutes. So the basic idea is that the video is silent, and then I want to use the sound as a political metaphor to refer to the silence of the White Terror. Yes, thank you. That's pretty much sum up my presentation. And there are some of the pictures that I used here for this video. And of course, there is American power overlook at the Taiwan situation. And I got to end my slide end my presentation in this picture. You know, that on the gate of the Green Island prison, there's they inscribed this 4 words: 新生之家, home of new life. So people come here to get a new life, and actually, and this kind of life is what should be document and record it in my work. And I also think that I juxtapose my father's story and a political prison together. Is a way to reverse that there's a kind of overlapping from a prison to a hospital. And that's what I'm kind of a modesty proposal that I try to present in my work. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Hongjohn, for your excellent and also very theoretical presentation. Reading the biodictionary written by people based on individual life experiences is always more lively and interesting than a dictionary written in official archives or in professional terms. Okay, Charwei also exhibited 2 works at the Green Island Human Rights Art Festival. In Songs We Carry, Charwei invites various migrant workers and refugees to sing in front of camera. In Numbers, she uses the implied meaning of ice cubes and the numbers to build a narrative about the White Terror. Let's welcome her to introduce her work for us. Charwei.
Hi everyone. I will be showing my slides. Yeah, Tom will be helping me show my slides. And so I'm Charwei Tsai, and I'm a visual artist from Taiwan, where I am right now at my studio. And I would just go right into the slides to save time. Can we play the video? The second slide and the video. So I work across different media, and a big part of my inspiration comes from ancient wisdom traditions, a lot of which I grew up with in Taiwan. And in particular, the contemplative tradition in Buddhism. For example, here I'm writing the Heart Sutra, a text on impermanence, on ephemeral materials such as a tree, and then let the text grow with the tree. And next slide, please. And so here on the right, you can see the same tree and the same work a few years later. And the next slide. Another part of my practice, which is what I will focus on in the talk today, is working with different communities in vulnerable situations. This series of work started in 2012, where I visited the Orchid Island, which is also called Lanyu in the east coast of Taiwan. It's actually quite close to 2 hours by boat from Green Island. And there are only about 3,000 people who live on this island, and most of them belong to the indigenous tribe called the Dawu, or the Tao tribe. And geographically, the island is very close to the Bataan Islands of the Philippines. So culturally and linguistically, they share much more similarities than to the mainstream culture in Taiwan. And initially, I was interested to film a special ceremonial dance where the women would sway their hair up and down to mimic the ocean waves as a way to pray for their men to come back safely from the sea. And then after spending more time with the people on the island, I realized that this was also where the nuclear waste facility in Taiwan was stored without the local people's consent. And the waste, the nuclear waste seeping from the eroded cans where they're stored is still damaging the health of the people who live on the island even today. So from this project onwards, I began to take interest in raising awareness on global crises such as climate change and nuclear waste and its impact on vulnerable communities who contribute least to these issues. The next slide, please. The next project from the series took place when I was in Nepal in 2016 and 2017. I was invited there for an academic workshop by the New School in New York, and I came across a makeshift camp for the earthquake victims. And the next slide, please. This was almost 2 years after the big earthquake in Nepal in 2015. And even after the government had received $4 billion in aid, many people were still living without homes. And many of them in these camps that were spread all around the country. This particular camp was in Kathmandu. The next slide, please. So together with my collaborator, who is a Tibetan filmmaker, who was born and raised in the Tibetan refugee community in Dharamshala in India, where the Dalai Lama lives. We went around the camp and recorded songs from the earthquake victims about their situations. And we were deeply moved by these songs. In particular, there was an old Brahmin priest who's on the top left corner of the slide. And he sang about his entire life experience and how he has suffered from the lack of education and from losing his home. And the others sang about separation with loved ones and songs of aspirations from their faiths. And the next slide. Shortly after the project in Nepal in 2017, while the Hayward Gallery in South Bank Centre in London was under renovation, the curator at the time, Stephanie Rosenthal, invited me to make a project that would include people who normally don't visit museums. This was also during one of the peaks of the migrant crisis in the UK and in Europe. So I wanted to work with the asylum seekers there. And then next slide. So I had the honor to meet with 2 groups of women asylum seekers. The first group is called Women for Refugee Women, who were based in London, who you see here. And the next video. As they were, this group, the women in this group, they were one of the few people, some of the few people who had personally experienced unfair treatments as asylum seekers and have had first-hand knowledge of what is going on inside these detention centers. They organized protests and activities to support the asylum seekers who are currently detained and who don't have a public voice. And then I should add here that just to give some background to this project, unlike the other neighboring countries where the governments have a timeline of deciding whether or not they would give asylum or to send people back to their homes. In the UK, the detention centers are privatized and they could legally detain someone, many of whom have never committed a crime indefinitely. And most of the taxpayers in the UK have no idea that they are paying for these costly and privatized detention centers that are often hidden in industrial parks all around the UK. And the next slide. And the next slide after that. So the second group of asylum seekers who we work with were detained inside the detention center in Bedford. And together with a vocal therapist who had professional experience of working inside prison cells and a charity group called Music in Detention. We ran 2 months of workshops of exchanging songs between these 2 groups. And it just so happened that the workshop leader from the charity group is also Taiwanese, who was Ji Wenye, who had invited me to participate in the discussion tonight. Since we were not allowed to film inside the detention centers, we did a rare recording of their songs. And the next slide, please. And we exchanged these songs and messages of support between these 2 groups of women. And in the next slide, we will play a minute clip from our recording.
Askası akşam karlar uçkan gezdi. Alalam la 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 lem.
Bella mama, hey. Bella mama, hey.
احساسات زیبا قدرتمند احساسات زیبا و قدرتمند احساسات زیبا و قدرتمند.
So as you have heard, the first lady, she was of the recording, she was from Kazakhstan. And even without knowing that, when we're recording in the beginning, I could hear the mountains and the hills through her voice. And it was really hard to imagine someone like her, for whatever reason that's happening in her country, made her travel all the way to, like, make a very dangerous trip all the way to the UK to be trapped inside this detention center indefinitely without any help or support. And then, so the final work was exhibited very publicly on the wall of the Royal Festival Hall in London. And it was just one of many cases, like I'm talking about this project. It's just one of many cases where the policymakers are too far removed from the consequences of their decisions. And then next slide. So then I continued this project with migrant boat workers in Kaohsiung in the southern harbor of Taiwan and recorded their voices as well. This series of 3 song projects were all presented in, all presented in Green Island Human Rights Art Festival last year. That was curated by Sandy. Besides showing in Taiwan, France, Japan, Australia, I'm also really glad that the series of songs have traveled to the global south as well, to Chiang Mai, Yogyakarta, and Mexico City, where many migrant workers come from. Because sometimes many of these people, they would give up everything that they would give up everything that they have to leave their countries to seek better work opportunities to support their families. So however, these songs also capture some of the realities and dangers of making this journey. And then the next slide. This was this is one of the very young, I guess a teenager or a young child who was also working on the boat, and who we recorded his songs as well. So the next slide. So this was the prison complex in Green Island where the song projects were shown. And then the next slide. And this is inside the particular prison complex that where I was showing. And then the next slide. This is a video. Actually, we can turn, yeah. So this video shows how the work was presented to mimic, the kinds of conditions that many of these people were in. And then the next slide, and then the next. I also show another video commissioned by the festival where I wrote the numbers 1 to 9 on ice and let them melt away. And the concept behind this project was how human lives were reduced to numbers under authoritarian and capitalist regimes. Because a lot of times when the prisoners enter these prisons, one of the first things they're asked, they're assigned numbers to replace their real identities, as a way to kind of brainwash them. And the next slide. And then this work was shown in a solitary prison cell where, all the walls were padded to prevent the prisoners from committing suicide. And I got, and one of the very interesting responses that I got, through the festival, one of the great things was that we had a lot of opportunities to get to know some of the families of the victims. And then also one of our panelists, she was a therapist who works with the families of political victims. And then one of the really interesting response that I got from her was that she was, to this work, was she said that traumas form when strong emotions get stuck and solidified. Therefore, it is almost like a therapy watching these numbers and the thoughts and emotions attached to them melt away. And she also mentioned that most traumas cannot be cured through rational communication or through rational language, and that therapies working directly with the body and its senses are usually far more effective. And so in my personal experience also, especially during the pandemic, making art, be very hands-on with the process of making art had been a healing process as well. So my hope is that art could help to raise awareness on the situations of these very vulnerable communities, as well as contributing to the healing process through community participation, such as singing and also being heard. Okay, that's the end.
Okay, thank you, Charwei, for your very amazing presentation. The songs sung by the refugees and the migrant workers are so painfully beautiful. It seems to me that those songs are still lingering around me. Just like I was in the Green Island. Every song is so touching and vivid that we can imagine the stories behind the songs. Okay, thank you, Charwei, again. I'm now yield the floor to our host, Donald. Donald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandy. Just a tiny bit of response, and then Sam. Sam, why don't you join us now? Just come on in now. I'm thinking about location. and local audience and global audience and documentation. And I guess, Sandy, that's sort of all wrapped up in a question for you about factual questions. What is the population approximately of Green Island? Do you know?
As far as I know, around 4,000.
Okay. And I would guess a lot of the work that you curated is for that audience, but it will have resonance for any human being anywhere, I think. Though, can you just say a bit about the curatorial practice as you realize it?
You mean for this art festival?
Yes.
Human rights art. Okay. Although not so many people lived in that island, but tourists, because Green Island is so beautiful and have like hot spring and beautiful scenery and a lot of different species in the island and even in the ocean. So every year it attracts so many tourists to visit that island. So I think our Human Rights Art Festival is not only for local people. Of course, local people is very, very important because they like, the hosts, to invite all the outsiders to come and visit that island. But I think just as one of the audience asked the question, the collective trauma. And also in Hongjohn's and both Hongjohn and Charwei's presentation, we can see that Green Island is like a container of collective trauma. So how to heal that trauma and at the same time, to adjust our current situation. I think that's my main concern for my curatorial practice for this, human rights.
And Charwei, you kind of answered that very fine question about how art can cure trauma by saying community participation and simply being heard, giving voice. And that leads me, the ideas about community, as our good friend Gary Platt mentioned, that does this work have an end or conclusion, or is it perpetual and ongoing?
Sorry, is this about my particular work or the whole festival?
Well, I think it's about the festival. I think it's about your individual works. I think it's a good question to apply to everything that is being done around human rights and arts. Is there a conclusion? Is the conclusion socio-political change, or how maybe it doesn't reach conclusions, maybe it is ongoing and perpetual, perpetuating the information, new ways of processing the past and bringing it to the present. I don't know if anybody wants to, before we go to Sam, if anybody wants to kick that philosophical or aesthetic ball around the yard a bit.
Maybe I can jump in. I'm thinking of actually when we were doing this project in Green Island, there are several things we are really careful about, because eventually it's we are talking about transitional justice, and which is already packaged in a political conflict between the KMT, I mean the blue party, against with the current party, which is Green Party, the DPP. So we are really careful that we don't step onto the dirty water. So in that case, we really focus on the people who live in Green Island. So that's, I think, most of the work that happened in Sandy's curatorial work and Charwei and my works are really going in that direction.
Well, you've kind of, in some ways, you've answered a question that just came in about the sensitivity required by artists when you're dealing with human rights and political power, and how to navigate that dirty water territory in ways that are balanced and fair, yet strong and true. At least that's my impression. Sam, why don't we pass the ball to you to tell us about Migration Matters and see if any of these issues might get illuminated by the work that you're doing. And by the way, where are you right now?
So Donald, yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm currently in Madeira, the island of Madeira in Portugal, which is sort of off into the Atlantic Ocean. So it's all rather lovely over here.
It's all rather island.
Yes, I know, it's all about the islands at the moment, and obviously I've sort of left the UK, the big island over there, just for a bit. And so yeah, I'm joining you from Madeira, and yeah, just a massive thank you for sort of inviting me to what has been an absolutely incredible panel of people and really inspiring artists, and an absolutely amazing festival, which I'm hoping to head out to myself at some point whenever we can. So yeah, yeah, I kind of feel a little bit sort of like overwhelmed by just how much actually has resonated from this conversation, and thinking about the way that the festival has interacted with sort of this sort of historical trauma, when in the UK, I mean, and as Charwei, you know, going to Bedford, going to Yarl's Wood Detention Centre, I mean, these are sort of places that are incredible, you know, where human rights have kind of basically been thrown out the window, and in what is supposed to be, you know, one of these big Western civilizations, and you know, and it's shocking, really. And the fact is that the UK is going to have to process that trauma as well, and that's what I'm sort of imagining is what that's going to look like, and how we're going to kind of look back and learn from that in the same way that I think, you know, there's a lot of learning obviously happening through and sort of, you know, kind of harking back and looking, you know, sort of recognizing that trauma. And so it's just really, yeah, it's just been fascinating kind of making those links and seeing actually how far behind the UK is in terms of addressing its own, you know, its own sort of breaches of human rights in that sense. So yeah, it's just been really fascinating. And so yeah, I'll sort of move on to kind of what Migration Matters has, well, the reason for it being around, I guess. And,
okay. And Sam, could I just interrupt? Shall the four of us now withdraw and leave the stage to you? We will shut down our videos and take it away, Sam.
Sure.
Yeah, see you later, Sam.
Thank you. So yeah, so Migration Matters Festival, I guess, is sort of born out of, I think, you know, for me at the time, it was a great concern about, you know, the fact that what I was seeing in the UK was a kind of, I guess, a sort of regression in terms of this idea of welcome, in terms of this idea of celebrating, you know, the sort of emerging multiculturalism of Great Britain. And so, you know, and kind of looking back to the fact that, you know, across the years, Sheffield, where this festival is staged, has been, you know, a sort of a beacon, a place of welcome, a place of accommodation for many cultures across, you know, across the decades. I mean, there's a huge Chilean population who, you know, sort of escaped Pinochet's regime. There's a quite large Iranian, you know, population who've obviously escaped escaped war-torn Iran in the 70s. And, you know, so it's been a kind of, it's a really interesting melting pot of cultures, and that has been something that I've, you know, been quite proud of as someone who's grown up in the city. And, you know, I sort of remembered back in the late 90s when the conflict in Kosovo, and I remember sort of initiatives there to welcome, you know, Kosovan refugees. And so it was sort of looking that, and then fast forwarding 20 years and seeing actually that in terms of the kind of the mainstream media and actually the general public's kind of perspective was that of sort of, you know, kind of denigrating the denigrating immigrants, and also kind of this idea of like terms like refugee and asylum seeker carrying this kind of stigma, and basically stigmatizing these people who've escaped from all kinds of trauma and great difficulty and suffering. And so I kind of was wondering kind of what's happened to sort of this national, our collective empathy, basically. And so I think that's kind of where Migration Matters Festival started, was actually, it was looking and re-examining, well, who is this city? Who makes up this population, our communities? This is incredibly diverse people. And I don't think everybody really recognizes and celebrates how rich, how those cultures have enriched Sheffield and the rest of the UK. So that's kind of been what the festival's been. I mean, and actually, I'm realize we're running a little bit low on time. So what I'll do is I'll just give you a little bit of a snapshot of our 2019 festival. So a couple of years ago, when we were able to do things properly, just to kind of give you a bit of a flavor of that. So yeah, Tom, if you wouldn't mind playing that clip.
C'est sous même trace dans ton nappe marché. Faut voyager, tonel pied sablier. Là, il était sous tête. Mais moi, nous va correr. C'est nous jouer les mêmes gens. À tout faire miser, quand la batte tout freine jouer pareillement. Associés les nous clouer bouche bée devant un gamin. Côte mémoire dans tes manger, privé, caille, Jean Boger. Votre côté, votre mener, votre passé. D'être cherché, mais moi nous défalquer, wow. Mais moi des chalmorés, wow. C'est belle, nous filmer, souvenir.
So I forgot how long that is. I should probably have got it to fade out a bit sooner. But that basically is a little kind of snapshot of kind of Migration Matters Festival. Obviously, as you can see, it's a very kind of multi-arts sort of festival, but also kind of taking in lots of different kind of community initiatives, which I'll kind of talk about in this very quick slideshow now. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. Thanks for your patience. I'm not very good when it comes to technology. Okay. I'm hoping that is okay. So yeah, so yeah, the festival has been sort of going now since kind of 2016. Well, 2015 we had a sort of pilot festival inspired by the themes of Refugee Week, which is a kind of a national umbrella festival, which basically celebrates the positive contribution of refugees and migrant artists to the UK. But I think what's been sort of interesting what I've found through the festival is that obviously, you know, we want to be able to kind of give and empower people who have had that lived experience of displacement, you know, of experiencing exile or yeah, being basically, you know, the different circumstances of migration because they are so nuanced. And I think that is something that across the UK has not necessarily been understood and sort of appreciated and recognized. You know, again, there's a lot of these sort of labels that are put out. And so in spite of us celebrating Refugee Week, there is a certain amount of, I think, kind of interrogation of that term and all terms, asylum seeker, you know, migrant, because they're sort of othering terms. And I think that's something that we've kind of wanted to sort of get away from really within all of this, you know, while acknowledging what the circumstances of somebody arriving into the country, but actually help, you know, letting them be seen as a sort of an artist and also someone who is now here and is therefore part of Sheffield, part of this country. So, so you know, that's kind of the sort of the mantra of the festival, is to sort of provide that equal platform, you know, among community members, but also we invite national artists and international artists and people with very different profiles to be a part of the festival, to sort of come together and sort of, you know, share aspects of their story, of their culture, and, you know, for there to be that kind of sense of sort of solidarity between those artists and that sense of resonance as well. So just kind of going back through the years, one of the groups that, you know, we sort of first supported, a group called the Moja Dance, and they're from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Again, arrived here as refugees, wouldn't necessarily describe themselves as dancers, but this was a sort of a platform they'd not had before. A lot of them they're not allowed to earn as asylum seekers. You know, they can only really volunteer, and even the volunteering they can do is limited. So having an actual performance space and a stage and an audience and people who actually are championing them and applauding them, you know, it's you know, it's a sort of I think quite a powerful thing for, you know, a number of them kind of came up afterwards and said, you know, this has kind of given me a little bit more confidence back because I've been struggling to actually settle into the city. And so, you know, the festival tries to find opportunities for groups like Emoja Dance. Another one is Carmen Tassin, who is, I believe he's still seeking sanctuary to this day, but he came from Kurdistan, and you know, he was at university studying art, where that then was outlawed. And in order for him to pursue a kind of a life that he wanted, you know, that he wanted, he sought asylum in Sheffield and has been there since, but created this incredible self-portrait using wool and nails, and we had him throughout the week showcasing his skills and his talents, and again this idea that anybody from the street can kind of come in, watch and see, and actually not necessarily know what Carmen's context was or his story behind that, you know, and actually just seeing him as an artist, you know. And I think, again, because of that sort of the stigma attached to these labels, it's this kind of trying to distance that and to kind of, I guess, give a space where someone can be treated basically as a human. Within Sheffield, obviously, we try and create and carve out lots of different opportunities. So it's not strictly all arts-based. You know, as you can see, we do football tournaments, but we basically try and speak to community members who have felt marginalized or have felt like they've not been given that opportunity, and say, what is it that you would like to put together. How can we support you? So, in the past we've had groups like Why Refugee Women, a Sheffield-based organization supporting female refugees, and they've put together like a fashion show to sort of celebrate the sort of styles and garments of different places and cultures. We've had sort of schools community dance sort of days, and and all kinds of sort of workshops and participatory activities, which just again kind of bring people together and I guess allow them to kind of escape what can often be quite a hostile environment within the UK, and something that our government has intentionally designed to try and make people seeking sanctuary feel unsafe. And so that is what we're trying to combat, is creating a safe space within the city and finding these kind of artistic platforms with which to offer. And so there's a few other examples of people who've like directly been exiled from their country. Shad Abusalama, who you might have seen was part of a Dabka group of Palestinian dancers, and she can't go back home, she can't go back to Gaza, she's stuck in Sheffield, she can't see her family. But actually there's something incredibly powerful about her and her collaborators and other dancers being given that sort of space to, in a sense of defiance at the oppressive regimes that have basically caused her to be kind of in a kind of, I guess, sort of limbo, as it were. And the same goes for Tonde Fury of Sosakla, which is a sort of a Zimbabwean choir. And also across the globe as well, we've tried to find spaces for artists and companies. We've hosted the Arab Puppet Theatre Foundation from Lebanon, and their piece is sort of talking about war and exile. And I think it's incredibly important for for audiences within the UK who don't really understand or haven't had, because it's not really taught. It's not taught about the kind of Britain's kind of complicity in these sort of foreign conflicts, and actually what the kind of the impact of that is. And so so bringing these performance pieces back to the UK, I think is incredibly important for that awareness to be sort of to be sort of offered to these audiences. We've also we've had a kind of a continuous link with Taiwan as well, and I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Koshin Chuang Pangcha. Sorry for my pronunciation. I'm sure that wasn't fantastic, but they're absolutely amazing piece 038, which was obviously also exploring home and identity, and within Hualien city, and obviously an incredibly niche sort of sort of backdrop and experience that a lot of people in the UK wouldn't sort of necessarily tap into. So again, these unheard voices, I suppose, across the globe, as well as within the local communities of Sheffield, it's sort of important to bring those people together. And of course, last year, we had to improvise. We had to do it all online. So we did it on we did it on screens. It was digital. We managed to connect again with artists in Taiwan, in Uganda, in the United States, across the world, to try and put together a kind of a performance showcase, which in a lot of people's darkest times, during a kind of time when the arts industry was kind of, I guess, sort of decimated, and people were sort of kind of creatively unable to really properly express themselves, we kept the festival going. We put on about sort of 46 events across the week, and again trying to kind of connect people, trying to kind of keep the spirit of that sort of cohesion alive. And then just a couple quotes from people over the years. There's plenty more, and I'm sure you can sort of find out a lot more over on our website as well. But we're going to kind of, the idea is to kind of continue to try and sort of combat what I'm seeing as a kind of an increased post-Brexit sort of xenophobia, within the UK, and something that, I think we need to be, constantly critiquing and interrogating and campaigning against, and, going to detention centres and properly protesting, and basically not letting the government kind of you know, sort of, I guess, yeah, kind of, you know, kind of con us into thinking that this is all okay. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I'm aware of time. But yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble on, and I will shoot back over to Sandy or Donald, whoever.
Both of us. Let's everybody come back. Open up the doors.
Please.
We're all invited to the table. So there are, if we could just address a couple of quick questions. Is the work that is in Migration Matters, is it ready-made, or is it created for the festival, or kind of both?
It's both, yeah. So we have conversations throughout the year with artists who are intrigued by the festival and who feel like they haven't really had the right platform for them to sort of showcase their work, and they will say, this is what we have, and we'll have kind of discussions that way. But then we also have commissioned opportunities as well, so that respond to themes and actually are kind of maybe a little bit more specific about kind of things that we want to explore within the festival. So actually, yeah, this year we had about sort of 5 commissioned pieces that were made, that were first premiered, I guess, at the festival, and then a number of work that is sort of either found through people approaching the festival or finding things at the Fringe. And obviously it's been brilliant to be able to kind of come and see a lot from the Taiwan season, which then has meant that we've wanted to program and bring artists over. So yeah, so it's a little bit of both.
Okay. And then there was another question about using different mediums to address socially engaged issues. Any thoughts about that briefly from anybody? Are there distinctions between using music or video, or is it, I'm guessing, this may be just me is it that you are drawn to a certain way of working or an idea and you find the best means to convey it? Does that sound kind of accurate? Will that suffice as the clock is ticking? But if you have any other thoughts you want to say about that, say them. Otherwise, your silence will speak volumes, and I will wrap up.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, from the perspective of the curator, usually I would like to answer the previous question also. In Green Island Human Rights Art Festival, most of the works are commissioned. More than 20 works in this festival. About maybe only 2 are ready works. So that's why I will consider the venue, site specific is a very important issue in my curatorial practice. I don't know, because in Green Island, this formal political prison is a very special place. So as a venue of art, human rights art festival, it will remind the collective traumas. I also think trauma is a way to know or to learn the memory, no matter it's a person or a place. So it's a very good entrance for you to understand them, and then to know them, and then to make a connection with them. Okay, I think I should pass to Hongjohn or Charwei, because it's almost the end of the panel. Thank you. Anyone? Hongjohn?
Yes,
no, I just have a very interesting. I just have some observation from Sam's project. It seems like the way you use it seems like the way you use music is kind of upbeat. It's kind of a celebratory in a way to celebrate immigrants' cultural representation and cultural history and so on and so forth. Whereas I observe in our Green Island project, also including in Charwei's piece, all this music is some kind of melancholic or nostalgic. So I don't know. I just found this kind of a formality is so different, and I couldn't. I'm still thinking, how and why. Of course, there's a kind of a strategy going on here.
Am I okay to answer that?
Yes.
I think that's a really interesting, and I was kind of conscious of that as I was sort of as I was kind of hearing about the work and also sort of watching, and learning more about Green Island and it's really, I mean, it's interesting because I think when I'm looking at sort of a lot of the participants, say, of Migration Matters, a lot of people actually don't necessarily want to sort of share their story as it were. And like there's a little bit, I mean, and that's not everybody, that's some of the people that we speak to, especially when we're talking to them via partner organizations or partner charities. And actually some people aren't quite ready to sort of talk about the things that have actually been quite challenging about their journey. And so actually, but there are aspects of sort of their culture they want to celebrate, that they do want to share. And so we try not to be, I mean, I guess, I don't want to sort of necessarily push anybody to sort of have to sort of tell their story, as it were, but we kind of leave it quite open in that sense. And I think a lot of people want to sort of feel that sense of escape, that sense of actually, of that sort of celebration, of being able to kind of feel that sense of joy, especially where they haven't had that before. But within the festival, we do have quite a lot of kind of quite challenging and provocative work that does explore, does explore the trauma and does explore, quite heavy issues. I think, but I recognize, that there is a kind of, I think in terms of sort of Green Island, in terms of the remit, it's sort of, it's tackling those kind of that sort of trauma head on, which I absolutely appreciate. And I think, the festival tries to sort of strike a bit of a balance, but probably does stray towards the celebratory end of things. And I think both are spaces that need, should be explored really. And I think that's the really lovely thing about that contrast in a way. It's sort of what that kind of, what those differences unearth.
Mm-hmm.
Pain and joy, paradise and prison. It's the ranges are there. Charwei, do you have something to add to this? I think.
I guess one thing I would like to share, like with my experience, working as an artist in these projects, is that especially when I was in London, I guess I went into it thinking that, as people who like somehow we could help with their issues or contribute to the problems that these communities are facing. And then while I was working on this project, one of the organizers telling me that, as community leaders, they would never use the word empower, because in a way it's like, who are we to empower them? And then that's something that also I have experienced myself, because when I was doing these workshops, sometimes these people I'm working with, they're so strong and they have so much life experience and they've been through so much in life that, I haven't been through, and many of us haven't had the same experience. So it was much more like a exchange rather than, feeling like somehow through these projects we're empowering them. And then that's why I also really appreciate Sam's work, because I feel like it really has this sharing, this very mutual sharing, and then kind of positivity to the work that I appreciate a lot.
This has been superb and so illuminating and moving. I'm really pleased to be here. Just a couple of ideas that I've had. I'm thinking about not only issues in the past that the arts can shed light on and expose and examine, but the present. And I'm thinking about arts makers when you're dealing with social issues, sometimes there can be an urgency or a need to get information out, to have a story be told, to make something that will possibly change. And yet artists need time to travel and to research and investigate and learn and talk and make and disseminate. And I guess all of those ideas that are rattling around in my head lead me to the question to each of you, and you can answer this very simply with a yes or a no, or expand a little. Are you also activists yourselves? Would you call yourself activists? Who wants to answer that one? Hongjohn, you are unmuted. Are you an artist activist?
I really think as a, of course, I'm very. I think our works has to load it with political and social content, and it has to be socially engaged. But that particular form of engagement with the artist definitely cannot be as the same as the conventional social activist. I think artists always have to think of some other form of strategy that is different from the conventional social activist. So it's the answer to your question will be yes or no.
Great. Anybody else want to address that or have any other ideas to expand on that? If not, it's okay.
Okay, I agree with Hongjohn, yes or no, but maybe we can say that artists will be always the rebel, always resist the already exist order. I mean the social order. That's my answer.
Sam, you unmuted and then you muted again.
No, it was just interesting because I think it's a fascinating question that actually we could probably we don't have enough time to delve into.
No, we need another 90 minutes.
No, no, it was just interesting because last year after we did the digital sort of festival, someone had written about what we sort of put together, and they described it as an artivist festival, interestingly. And I mean, I don't know, I kind of need to unpack that quite a lot, I think, that term, but I think activism itself, when I think about, and especially like, again, in reference to sort of, people who kind of are campaigning day and night, going to sort of Yarl's Wood and detention centers and protesting and all the rest of it. I mean, it's kind of, perpetual work. I mean, and obviously the same as being an artist as well. And yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I feel like personally and as a festival, I feel like we can always be doing more to actually do it, but of course there's that whole issue of sort of capacity and being able to actually properly do that, and again in the arts being so underfunded, it's there's almost like a limit, and there should never really be a limit to the activism that we do. So I mean, I feel like I'm not enough, I don't do enough personally, and perhaps as a festival, for us to kind of truly be activists in that sense, but we're striving to.
Charwei, you were going to say something, I think.
I guess, I don't know, for me, this is also a difficult question because a lot of time I feel like as we're hearing more and more like diverse voices through the internet, the world is also becoming more and more polarized. And then so I feel like a lot of times when you're taking a political position, which is what a lot of activists, they have to do, then it's kind of like you're for this and you're against that, and then that's kind of creates more binaries, And then, so my interest in these kind of projects, which I also see in Sam's projects, is more about what do we share in common? And then how do we kind of celebrate that part?
Super. And there was a question for you, by the way, about participants. Have you encountered participants who don't want to share their stories?
Yes. Because I mean, it depends on where, because like, for example, the group I was working with in London, they're activists. So they're very vocal and they really want to share and they're very open. And but inside the detention center, actually, we had some really great singers, but they don't want to share. So it was kind of interesting because it was kind of different culture. Like, I have to say, the Asians were more shy with sharing their songs. And then, of course, the ones who would like to share are, I mean, we invite people to volunteer to do it. So, of course, we don't force anyone to sing, to share their songs.
Well, I guess rather than activist, maybe the word is catalyst, or people who open up a space for reflection and self-examination. And I'm also thinking of something that a speaker in the previous session about digital versus live said. The question was, how can we be connected? And I think all of you are finding ways in your work to make those connections. So thank you for that. We've run out of time. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the Ministry of Culture for supporting this and Zoo TV Live. Just a reminder that there is one other day of sessions, 2 other sessions next Monday at 11 a.m. British Standard Time, transforming circus and shaping its future in Taiwan, Japan, the UK, and beyond at 11 a.m. And then at 2 p.m., Indigenous Artist Development, a Global Context. Also, there are 4 online performances all month via summerhall.co.uk from Taiwanese dance-based companies. 3 of them reconceived for film, 1 of them a re-edited live stream. I think they're terrific. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the PR. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here with us, and have a great and catalytic day. Go forth and be activists and artists and people.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.